Okay, so thank you, everyone. This is the elite team. This is a name that we chose at the last minute. I had personally thought that if we had gotten time to, work with a Parquet format data, we would have gone as the Parquets, but sadly that didn't happen. But yeah, so there's a team of Lauren, me, and Michael. So I'll just introduce like what the structure of this presentation. We basically looked at state patrol data in Arizona and Colorado because we figured that that would help us control for some variables. So those states, they're different because there are cultural differences, there's like political differences between the states, but they're also close enough that some of the demographics are the same, some of the cultural factors are the same. And we also decided to look at state patrol data to like standard it because we assumed that there would be certain homogeneous procedures between the two agencies across the states. And so that would also control for some variables. So the way we decided to do this was to divide this topic into macro and micro levels. So Lauren will start us off by discussing racial disparities that she's found in the traffic stop data. I will then pursue that tangent by moving on to showing income and racial disparities in terms of the outcomes of traffic stops. Michael will then continue onwards and show us some of the work that he's done in analyzing the timing of the traffic stops and any patterns that he's found there. And then we'll end off with just giving us our final thoughts on the integrity of some of the data and what further steps could be done with this analysis. So Lauren, over to you.
Hi everyone. I hope you can hear me all okay. My name is Lauren Waller, and I am a senior computer science major at Spelman College. And like Zohan said, as a member of the elite team, I was tasked with reviewing and analyzing what we refer to as micro level aspects of the data. That is, I was more focused on more so the people and who these people are involved in the traffic stops, rather than time, location, and things of that nature. So next slide, please, or if you're able to. So when I first got the data set, both data sets, it was a little overwhelming because both the Arizona State Patrol data set and the Colorado State Patrol data set had over 3 million entries. So how I decided to approach it was I made these 4 different visualizations, 2 of which are from the State Patrol data set, and the other 2 are from the respective census data that I found for 2010, because that was the most recent census that fits sort of in between the time that all of the data was collected. And by creating these visualizations, I was able to see that while in Colorado, there is not much disparity between population by race and the traffic stops by race, there did seem to be just a little bit of a difference in Arizona, where if you can see at the top left, certain demographics such as Hispanic and Black or African Americans experience traffic stops at a bit of a higher rate than what their population is. So noticing that pattern, if you could go to the next slide, please, I decided to see if there was any sort of outside research that would sort of corroborate this pattern that I saw. And one of the first things that I came across was this article by the Phoenix New Times, which looked at the exact same data set as we did, and looked specifically at vehicle searches by driver's race in Maricopa County. So it is a bit of a smaller scope, but still kind of on the same path. And what this author found was that Latino and Hispanic peoples were more likely to be stopped and then searched than their white counterparts. And then doing some more research, if we could go to the next slide, please. Doing some more research, I found that in 2008, the Arizona's ACLU released a study titled Driving While Black or Brown in response to a lawsuit that they had with, I believe, Arizona's DPS that required the DPS to then begin taking sort of account of their traffic stops. But this was between the year of 2006 and 2007. So this is right before the Stanford data set sort of starts having collections, And what the ACLU found was that people of color were not only more likely to be stopped and searched than their white counterparts, that they were also more likely to be detained for longer than their white counterparts. So what this told me is that not only does Arizona seem to have a history of issues with policing, but it's racialized in some sort. And next slide, please.
All right, Lauren. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, so over to me. So what I wanted to do was continue this tangent of micro-level analysis and look at a county level breakdown of what I wanted to see was in terms of outcomes. So there were three main outcomes that we looked at: arrests, citations, and warnings. And so what I wanted to look at was if there were racial or income related disparities that affected these outcomes for particular drivers. And so what I did was that I used data from the census to look at the median household income for counties, and also a racial breakdown using the 2020 census. One weakness, so just moving on, this is the first data that I was able to find, household income. So just to basically outline is the orange points are Colorado and the blue points are Arizona. You can see the blue points are smaller, are less in number just because Arizona has fewer counties, because this account, each individual data point here represents a particular county, which with its median in household income. And one other thing that I did was that when I ran this analysis initially, I saw that arrests, warnings, and citations, there was a pattern to them. But the pattern was that there was an obvious pattern that most of these there were a larger number of these outcomes in counties that had a larger population. So to account for that factor, what I did was I decided to normalize these. So what I did was I took the arrests, the outcome numbers for each county, and divided those by the population of that county, and basically came up with a figure of how many warnings per 1,000 residents or how many arrests per 1,000 residents, just to normalize and see if there was to account for the fact that larger counties or counties with higher population would be expected to have higher outcomes. So what these graphs represent is basically those normalized outcomes plotted against the median household income for that county. And so you can see that there is a weak correlation between income and lower. There's a weak negative correlation between income and the outcomes. So for instance, particularly this is visible in warnings and citations. You can see like there's a weak, maybe not linear, but parabolic correlation where the higher the median household income is, the lower you can see that the normalized warnings or the normalized citations appear to get lower. And for Arizona in particular, we can even see arrests have this particular trajectory where, there's a very sharp trajectory. The moment median household income starts to increase, there's a sharp decrease in the normalized number of arrests. Whereas for Colorado, this appears to be right about the same for arrests. So yeah, this is an interesting pattern that I haven't really found an explanation for. Like a lot of analysis of traffic stops, particularly related to household income, appears to be done at the national level. And so there doesn't seem to be a lot of work that's done specifically in context of Colorado or Arizona that I've found. So that would be an interesting, I think, tangent to go further. After that, I decided to do 3 more analyses, and those were to look at each of the individual outcomes, arrests, warnings, and citations, and see if there were racial disparities in who got arrested, who got cited, and so on. Just before explaining these, I want to make sure, so Hispanics are the one major category that I was not able to find particular data for. So the census data I was using would not give you Hispanics as an aggregated category. So for instance, you would be able to select the percentage of white Hispanics in a county, or the number of African American with Hispanic ancestry, but you would not be able to find an aggregated Hispanic figure. And so due to the lack of time, I wasn't able to find data for Hispanics, but I feel like that is probably a major omission because Hispanics are probably the major minority category in both of these states. And
1 minute.
Yeah. And so you can see in terms of arrests and disparities. So for Arizona, you can see that there appear to be, in terms of arrests, there seems to be this decline in the arrests, and yeah, so there seems to be this decline racially for African Americans, for Asians, whereas there seems to be this slight increase for American Indians and Alaska Natives. So all of these graphs you can see, these don't lead to any particular conclusion with regard to racial disparity. But one of the explanations there could be is that the three minority categories that I've looked at are also represented at very small numbers in these states. And so the major minority that we could have looked at, Hispanics, I wasn't able to find good data for. And so that is something I want to look at further. Michael, over to you.
And it'll have to be quick because we're at time.
Okay, so should we still go, or should we just end it here?
If you can step through quickly.
All right, so I'm going to go very, very quick. So good evening, everyone. I'm a senior at Morehouse College. You can go to the next slide. So basically what we're doing is I looked at the effect of time. What does it have on traffic stops? We thought it was most appropriate to include a screenshot of the data that we use in Excel. As we stated, we did Arizona and Colorado. We noticed that in Arizona, it had like the time, but in Colorado, most of the time was, there was no time shown, which was missing. And the reason why we focus on this was because we feel like time is a critical factor when analyzing data. So we just continue to look at the time factor. Even though Colorado didn't really show much, we just really kind of focus on Arizona. So again, as you can see here, some of the things that I kind of got from this data is I saw that so traffic stops for minor violations are more common between 9:30 to 2 p.m. These are the people generally who are not working. This is kind of like some kind of like inferences and assumptions that we kind of made from the data. Another thing we saw also is that during the summer months, from about 7 p.m. until midnight, we realized that officers didn't really have time to worry about traffic enforcement. And one of the last things that I saw due to the time was that while every state and city are different, people are more likely again to be pulled over between 9:30 and 2 in the day, instead of the daytime between or the morning between 1:30 and 3:30 a.m. So that's all that I have. I know because of time. That's all that I have. Thanks.
Yeah, so just to finish off, so as Michael mentioned, there were a lot of gaps in the data. This is, for instance, some of the data I looked at Colorado. These are the columns that are shown. And so you can see there's a very high number of null percent. Null percent basically represents how much of the values are null. And so you can see some of the outcome measures such as arrests, citations, warnings. These are almost half of that data is null. And so what we would do in the future is probably try to find data that has more integrity and to try and run these analysis again and see if we come with different results. So thank you. That's all from our side.